Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I am going to show you how to fix thin areas of knitting, like this elbow on this sweater sleeve is nice and thin right here where the elbow sits. As you can see, I have a 2-year-old with me. He's playing with my needle case and the rest of my needles. You can use this method to fix up thin areas on sweater elbows or sock heels and toes, anywhere things are thin and you want to thicken it up and strengthen the fabric before a hole is formed. This is really easy to do before the hole is formed, but if you wait till there's after a giant, until after there's a giant hole, it's going to be really hard to fix. So you're going to need some yarn. This is yarn left over from when I knit the sweater. If you don't have any yarn left over from when you knit the sweater or made the socks, you just want to find a yarn that is of a similar weight and type as the garment you're mending. Tapestry needle with yarn and a darning egg. This stunningly gorgeous darning egg is a plastic toy food egg from my kids' toys. Works perfectly. The darning egg helps you to see your stitches and helps the needle slide through the stitches and helps keep you from sewing your sleeve shut, which I have done. So you're going to want to slide your darning egg inside to your thin spot and then stretch the fabric out over it a little bit. Not a whole lot. You don't want to break those fragile stitches, but you do want to stretch them out a little bit so you can see where they run. Let me focus this again. You can see the path the stitches take quite easily, which will be helpful for when you're actually doing the mending. So take your needle that's already threaded with yarn and find an area on the edge of your thin area. So this is my thin area here. I'm going to start in the lower right hand corner and I'm going to start right here and I'm going to go from the front of the fabric and come up in the center of a stitch. Pull it through, leaving a tail to weave in later. Now I'm just going to duplicate stitch over all of my thin stitches. So since I've got this stretched nice and tight over my darning egg, I can see very clearly the path the stitches take. So I'm following it up around the back, pull my yarn through, and then I come back down in the center of the stitch. And then, with it still in the back of the fabric, I just scooch it across to the next stitch in the row and come up in the center of the next stitch. And with your knitting stretched nicely over this darning egg, you'll be able to see which stitch is next. So now I'm in the center of the next stitch and I'm going to follow the path of that yarn around so that I'm duplicate stitching over this thin stitch. Down in the center, over to the next column, up in the center of the next stitch. I'm tugging my yarn tightly to try to match the tension of the original stitches. You don't want it to be super loose because then it will just look wonky. You don't want it to be, whoops, I'm in the wrong spot. You don't want it to be super tight because then you're going to end up with puckered fabric. So I'm coming and I'm following this stitch around this way. Down in the center, then I come over and up in the center of this one. This is the other edge that I'm going to. I'm going to put my thumb over top while I tug these stitches a little bit tighter. I don't think they're quite matching the right tension. Then I'm going to duplicate stitch around this stitch, follow the path of the yarn. And I'm going to go down in the center, but then I'm going to come up that column and I'm going to come up in the center of the next stitch up the column. Put my thumb on top just to help keep everything from getting pulled out of shape. So now I'm up here and I'm ready to knit or work across the next row of stitches. So I'm simply watching where the yarn goes, and I actually want to come from the other direction actually. If you're going from right to left, it will be easy if you're right-handed, but if you're going from left to right, it's a bit of a challenge. So I'm going to come across this way. I'm still duplicate stitching, still following the path of the yarn, coming down in the center of that stitch, then up in the center of the next one. And I'm looking where my yarn goes, up around this way. And I'm following the path of it with my needle down in the center of this stitch, up in the center of the next one. Duplicate stitch is actually incredibly meditative and soothing to work once you get into it. Now I'm coming across to the column where I originally started. So I've got one more stitch to work here in this column. Then I'm going to come down in the center of that stitch and up in the center of the next one up the column. I'm going to put my thumb on top of it so I don't pull it completely out of shape while I tighten this stitch. And then I'm going to start working across the next column, following the path of the yarn. I'm just using duplicate stitch to create new fabric over top of the thin fabric. So this whole area is strengthened. You can see the darning egg in the background gives me something to stop my needle and slide my needle across as I'm making my stitches. It's very handy, very useful, and also means you don't sew your sleeve shut like I did. Now I'm to the other side, and I'm just going to come up the column so that I can start working across the other way. I might have given myself too little yarn here. I'm going to work my way across the other way. The most challenging part is making sure you stay in the same row. My egg is getting pushed around. It's easy to travel up and down a row. Here I am to the other side, running out of yarn. I'm gonna go up to the next column of stitches and work my way across that one. Oops, I'm up too far. There we go. I'm gonna have to get a bigger or a second piece of yarn to finish this. It's getting caught on something. There we go, it's just tight. All right, I'm gonna have to leave off there because my yarn is too short. You can see here where I've fixed it. It doesn't look altogether too much different from the surrounding area. It is thicker, but it blends in nicely. You could use a contrasting color yarn if you wanted to do a visible mend and have it show up really nicely as a statement piece. You can see from the side it's a little bit raised. That's because all this surrounding fabric has had 2 years of wear, and now all of a sudden you've got a new patch of fabric here in the center. But since it's in an area that you wear really hard all the time, it's going to thin up really quickly. Really, I don't think you can tell, especially because it's under your elbow, or in the case of socks, under your heel or your toe. So that is how I fix my thin elbows, just like that. Hopefully you found this useful. Thank you guys, and I'll see you later. Bye.